Welcome to the Real Dough Show, the podcast for the people with a purpose. Today is a different show. Today, my sister's here with us today. She is a licensed therapist. She's the first person in our family, I believe, to finish college and everything. Set such a wonderful example. And we've had the idea to talk about mental health, Black men and mental health, I suppose specifically. But we wanted this show to be organic, so we've been trying to do it for probably the last few months. Hadn't really worked out, busy schedules, but we're here today, and I'm just going to turn the show over to her. So I'm not running it or anything. I'm just here. We just having an organic conversation. But I do know that she helps a lot of people, and I just felt like Black men and mental health is something that obviously is very important and a lot more talked about now, which is a good thing. So we'll just see what happens. Let's have some fun with it. Welcome to the show, Darcel.
Thank you very much, Christopher. He
It's all you.
My favorite brother.
All right, your only brother, but that's cool.
My only
I'll
brother.
still take it. Yeah, especially when you treated me when we was kids. So I'm glad I'm your favorite brother now.
Yeah, I'm so glad he forgave me. Really glad he forgave me. As he said, I am a licensed professional counselor, and I work with individuals in mental health, everything from depression to schizophrenia, you name it, I work with it. And I have the pleasure of meeting some fantastic men and women and boys and girls and teenagers that I think it's a privilege to work with. And so, as he said, this is going to be different. I came up with the idea many months ago, and of course, we have had a problem getting together because of our busy schedules. And even today, it's still busy. He has somewhere to go. I have somewhere to go. I'm on a Zoom now. I have to go to a retirement party after this, and another Zoom call at 7, talking about adults or parenting adult children. That's another Zoom this evening at 7. Wow, parenting adult children. That's a whole nother topic. So we're going to talk about mental health today, what that looks like. We often hear it now in the news, the media, counseling. We have life coaches now. We have mental health is popping up on the news. It's in our social media. It's everywhere. But specifically, I want to talk a little bit about mental health in African-American men, as far as the stigma, what it looks like, what are the barriers, what prevent men from reaching out. Just kind of get into the dirt, the grime, and try to free some of our men so that they can be a little bit freer with reaching out and going to get help, and not waiting until something tragic happens, or, because it's okay to reach out, not only for mental health, for physical health, for psychological help. It is, this is the time to reach out. You don't have to suffer in silence. There's help. There is counselors. If you're not comfortable with a woman, there's men counselors, there's African-American men counselors, there's African-American women, young, old. It's just help out there. So first of all, I want to talk about, or I want to begin to ask Chris his thoughts of mental health in African-American men from a man's point of view. What do you think some of the barriers are?
Well, I think it's a lot better now. I know for people like our dad, I suspected that our dad, suffered, from depression, maybe anxiety. But I think, certainly for his generation, it just seemed like he was very prideful, or maybe shamed, didn't want to admit certain things. So I imagine for him, it was a generational thing. I guess the men that I know now that I'm really cool with, most of them are up to speed, like they're okay. The guys that I'm really close to do work on themselves. They are, more so in touch with their vulnerabilities, don't mind admitting it. But I would imagine overall for Black men, I think it's just a matter of not seeing the examples out there. Um, I can imagine, ego, you got to look strong. You talk from a young boy, not to show weakness. If you play sports, it's this thing of forcing through, you know, there's all kind of stereotypes. So like if a guy, has busted ribs or if he's really hurt or whatever, they'll say he toughed it out. You know what I mean? So if he's mentally going through, I remember when Brett Favre lost his father, quarterback, and he had played this Monday Night Football game, and he had a great game. It was a really big deal, and he was throwing signs up to his dad and having that sort of thing. But I remember people just talking about it, how tough he was, to come back and play through such grief. And so I think that that's praised. And sporting is totally praised. If a guy, melts down in a basketball game, they'll say he's mentally weak. So anytime people admit that, I believe that it's just that stigma of feeling weak mentally and not wanting to be, made fun of, not wanting to show their weakness, because then people lose respect for them. They don't think that they're a winner. So I believe, it's probably just a matter of hypermasculinity, and the images that we traffic in, and again, the way we talk about people who, they talk about the people who overcome, but they don't talk about what happens during the overcoming. You know what I mean? We just want to know you overcame, you performed, you came in, you did the job, he's tough, so I think that's probably has a lot to do with it, because when people talk, are going through their mental stuff, again, even now when we talk about it, but we're not necessarily, again, we talk about it from afar, what he's going through mentally. So, let's have some respect for that. But again, we don't necessarily want to know the story. We want to know he was here and now he's there. Yeah, what a tough guy. But we don't necessarily want to hear the story. So how people say, how are you? And so the nice thing to say is, I'm fine, how are you? It's like but if they were really asking you, how are you? And you were like, well, actually, I'm having a really bad day. They'd be like, oh, no, I don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? So there's probably a lot of reasons, I'm sure, but those are just some that come to mind off the top.
It's interesting that you brought up our dad. And our dad been deceased many years, but I remember some of those, those final conversations I had, a couple of months before he passed away. And when I had the opportunity to pray with him, and when we sit down and he began to talk to me about some of his young adult experiences, and I understood him in a way, because sometimes we don't really understand the traumatic experiences in which individuals go through, and how sometimes our childhood experiences have a direct results on our adult behaviors. And, oftentimes we say man up or woman up, that was like a long time ago. But a lot of those childhood experience impact or directly influence the way we think. It has been studied that a lot of our brain development does not actually stop to, we're like in the beginning of our 20s. So it's kind of like, a traumatic brain injury. If something happens psychologically in our formative years, hey, something happens with that. As a result, our thinking has a tendency to get a little skewed. So I remember with my dad, he told me that when his mother went off to do life, I would say, he was dropped off at his grandma's house with a brown paper bag and a suitcase, and that was it. So it makes you wonder what kind of experience or what was his thought processes during that age to be, kind of just dropped off when you're 9, 10, 11-year-old little boy, and your mother is just gone. You know,
So,
what psychologically happens to you when your foundational years are shattered as a little boy, and how does that determine your process or your ability to connect with others as you begin to grow up and form relationships? Because as you and I know, his main problem was forming quality relationships.
but and then in the same thing, and at the same time, seemed like he knew everybody. He had a bazillion friends, and they were, hey, Otis, everybody seemed to like him, from an extended perspective. You know what I mean? So if he didn't owe them some money or nothing, you know what I mean? If he wasn't
Right.
running away from them, they liked him, but like you said, sustaining relationships, who's kind of had that jack of all trades personality, but master of none, in terms of
Absolutely.
quality, intimate relationships. They were always, again, ethereal, kind of associates. Like when people say, I don't have friends, I have associates. Daddy had a lot of associates that, again, for his generation, they called associates friends. It was almost the same thing. So no, I wondered that, a lot more so after he died, because even though I was going through my own mental stuff, I guess relating to him at that time, it never crossed my mind initially that he was going through mental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, he wasn't one to talk about it, so I just kind of judged him on his performance, you know what I mean? Whether he showed up, whether he did what he said he was going to do, and that sort of thing. That's kind of where we were, as you and I both were, for a long time with him. But definitely after he died, I remember even going to the gravesite a couple times and just thinking what his life must have been like, especially after you and I talked about, and I knew that he grew up with his grandmother and he used to talk about that all the time, but he had never said to me, I don't know if he said it to you, but he never said to me, gee, that really bothered me that my mom dropped me off, that it, you know what I mean? Like he never breathed a word of it, to me. He talked very admirably about his grandmother. And then obviously we grew up going to Pennsylvania every year to see our grandmother. And a lot of times he was there. And so, as a kid, you don't know how to put those two things together. You don't think just your normality. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think, and again, just like we, in just talking about general mental health, we're looking at that from an observational perspective. We're sort of standing out, we're looking in and talking about it, but anybody who's going through, to you and to me, certainly, through my mental child, it's just life. It's what it is. So, you think that's just normal. You think it's normality.
So it's interesting that you said that, because oftentimes we normalize dysfunction.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't know anything else.
We don't know anything else until we hit a brick wall, or we find ourselves in a stagnant position, and we're wondering why we can't go further, because we've been normalizing dysfunction and we're stuck.
Right. Yeah.
Or we get in a relationship and somebody bring it to our attention, like, did you know that you are kind of just stuck? Or until you coming into a aha moment, like, oh, I didn't realize that I don't get along with nobody, or I don't realize that my thinking always seemed to defeat me.
Yeah.
Or I'm always sad, or I'm always in mania, or I continue to stay in debt because I'm way over here, or I have addictive behaviors.
Right.
You'll find that, it's just always, it's something, and that's just some things when it comes to mental health. We'll just begin to normalize our behavior, or we normalize our irrational thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they make sense to us.
It makes sense to us. And some of us live like that, and it's okay. You know, that's why, you know, even in the field that I work in, I absolutely love it when I get a 20-year-old in my office or a 25-year-old in my office and say, hey, I want to work on me. You know, when you get somebody that young and like, hey, I'm ready to work on me, not saying that you can be 50 and 55 to work on you, but when you get somebody 25.
That's funny. I was having a conversation with your niece, my daughter Gabrielle, about that same thing. And I was telling her, even on her own personal mental health journey as Kalia's, my other daughter, uh, man, they're just so way ahead of the curve from where I was. And the fact that they even, again, are aware of their challenges and then ready to embrace them and do something about it. So, you know, because I spent, you know, it wasn't until, you know, after I went to the hospital, you know, in 2009 and started getting group therapy and then one-on-one therapy that, you know, that was my beginning of, you know, understanding how my past, you know, as a child affected my early adulthood. So now our children, you know, they have so much more information, so much more acceptable now. And so I feel like, man, you know, you can get some of this stuff by the time you 30 and really be on your road for real, loving yourself, accepting yourself, you know, for who you are, recognizing your triggers and stuff like that, and then being able to be in a situation where, hey, I'm not in a good place right now. You know, I can sit in that, but it's going to be okay. You know, like when I was talking to Gabrielle about it, you know, she felt bad. She kept apologizing. I'm so sorry. You know, I don't mean to cry, blah, blah, blah. And I was telling her, it's okay. I think a lot of times you're trying to defeat the thing that you're feeling, you know, and you feel like you should just be okay. And sometimes you don't have to be okay. You know, Iyanla Vanzant talks about that when she says, sit in it. What is that? What is that you're feeling? Now sit in that. And it's okay to sit in it and resonate with it and be like, hey, it's okay. You know, and because there are times, again, I'll sit in something. It is what it is. But I know that it's not going to stay with me forever. You know what I mean? And my spirit would tell me, okay, all right, it's time to get up now. You know what I mean? But when you spend so much time oppressing it, repressing it, trying to fix it, then you're denying that. You know what I mean? And it's just going to come back because you didn't have any type of exhale. I told her, I said, while you're sitting in that thing, become curious about it. You know what I mean? So now it's not just what you're dealing with on the inside. Become curious. Now, why did I feel that way? Why did I react that way? Can I think of times when I reacted that way before? You know what I mean? What are the things that are consistent with every time I right here, this, and this happen, right? Then
Absolutely.
you're becoming curious about it. You're not judging it, right? And you
Absolutely.
be like, it's like, all right then. You know what I mean? And that's when you some of that discovery you begin to get free. But if you can't sit in it and become curious, and then like I told her, when you're curious, you're not judging it. You're not harsh on yourself. You're just curious. You know, you're looking at it from a critical thought perspective, which takes you out of the mere feelings, right? And so I told her, never apologize. You never apologize for how you feel, especially if you're talking to me, because I'm a safe person to talk to. You know, so no matter what it is, it don't even have to be logical. But you have to learn how to sit in it and let it resonate, and you feel everything you're supposed to feel with it, become curious, and then you can say, okay, now what I'm gonna do about it here. Maybe this will be the thing you talk to your therapist about next time. Because you, even when you're talking to a therapist, the therapist is not their job just to fix you. They're to help you see the things, you know what I mean? They're to help you build yourself, I believe, anyway. Because you know, if you were my therapist, then I would have to listen to you to implement the things that you're telling me. Because at the end of the day, you're going to give me tools and help me, but there's going to be times when I don't have you there. So, and I just can't call you when I'm having an attack per se. It may be 2, 3 in the morning. You may be on vacation or whatever the case may be. But I got to learn how to handle that, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So,
Which goes back to men, because oftentimes as men grow, they base their identity in the man, all the components of being a man versus what it is to be themselves.
yeah, definitely.
So,
And yeah, definitely.
so therefore, they get lost into being the identity in what someone create them to be and not in being who they are, because they don't know how to sit with themselves versus sit in the identity of who they're supposed to be. And we get really construed, men and sometimes women, but definitely a lot of times in men, because I'm more sitting with the identity as that I this is what I gotta be versus this is who I am.
Yeah. And yeah, that's tough. I mean, that's tough because you got to know who you are first,
Absolutely.
which is a whole nother tale in itself. That is something that develops over time. You know, uh, I believe many years because there's so many layers to who we are. And we're constantly evolving. Well, you hope that you're evolving. You know what I mean? You hope you're not the same person you were when you were 20. Uh, but yeah, just accepting knowing who you are and accepting it. Yeah, that's a tough thing, especially because, like you said, there's outside peer pressure, right? Uh, and it takes a lot of courage to choose you for who you are. And let me tell you, I can tell you that took a long time for me. Uh, even to the point of, you know, like Brene Brown talks about dancing, and she told this story about how she was in the shoe department with her daughter. And she was, I think they were returning some shoes or something. And it was a high end store. And so she's upstairs and this song comes on and her daughter started, singing and just dancing, with the song. And she can't really dance. So these other two ladies with their daughters, they all, Gucci'd out and everything with their nice outfits, and they looking at her like, oh, look at this. She's just making a fool out of herself. She's so, you know. And so she was like, at that moment, she said, I felt that same thing. Like, oh man, she embarrassing me. But I was like, but something told me, choose her, choose her. So she said, at that moment, she started dancing herself and singing and acting goofy. And then everybody was cool. You know what I'm saying? So I take that like the same thing, the same thing. So, my wife is a really good dancer, right? Me, not so much. I never have been, right? But I could get by. I think I could get by, right? You know what I'm saying? I could get by, but I know that because she's a really good dancer, I remember when I went to Lincoln, man, I wouldn't get into no dances. I would go and just stand on the wall because everybody else was doing the cabbage patch, whatever they was doing, and I didn't know how to do none of that stuff. And I just remember seeing the joy that people had in dancing, right? And just me standing there, no confidence whatsoever, thinking I would get laughed at or whatever, scared to ask a girl to dance or whatever, right? Uh, so so we've had conversations. We first got married, and we go out and she'd be like, "All right, baby, I'll be dancing." She'd be like, "All right, baby, let's hands, let's hands." I'll be like, "Oh, right." So I'm doing my thing. So it got to the point where I was like, "Well, you messing me up. I can't dance because you messing me up. I'm overthinking it." So I said, so we came up with a compromise. She's never taken me up on it, thankfully. But it was cool. I was cool with it. I was like, look, baby, if I'm a bad dad, it's okay. You don't have to stand here with me. But you know what I mean? The fact that I got up to dance, that's a really big deal for me, right? You know what I mean? Because you don't know my history with dancing, right? Or my history with Shane. So, you know, but I've gotten to the point where I don't care. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it because when I get up now, I'm dancing for the joy. That's my jam, right? And whether I look like somebody who can dance or not, you know what I mean? The joy of dancing and not caring who's watching you. Not that they watching you anyway. You know what I'm saying? They ain't tripping off of you like that. You know what I mean? They ain't worried about you. When I was in high school, they wouldn't have been worried about me. You know what I mean? But I didn't know that. So, but so me not worrying about how my steps look, you know, that's again accepting who I am and living me, right? I'm being myself. I went to Lola years ago the same way. And I told Larry Blue, I was like when he had Lola, I was like, man, I'm coming here, I'm gonna get it in. You know, I'm gonna get it in. I just gotta get this monkey off my back. You know what I mean? Hard week, a lot of stress, you know, and I'm gonna get it in. So he was like, Chris, I ain't never seen you dance like that in your life, but I didn't care. So I owned it, right? So I owned it. And again, you know, that took a lot of time, you know, so that was just one area of owning it, right? You know, but owning yourself, yeah, in public, like Chris Rock said, when he talked about relationships, he said, you know, most people you don't meet the person when you first meet them, you meet their representative, right? And so I go out of my way now to you know, there's time and place for everything, but I really it's a mission of mine to constantly live my truth and be the person who I am because pr- pressing that in is really damaging. It's really damaging when you're always self-conscious and you're not presenting your true self because it's hard to keep that representative, you know, going. You know what I mean? It's really hard. So me being the touchy-feely guy, you know, I don't mind telling people if I love you, I love you. I love you, brother. I love you, sister, right? You know, there used to be a thing because people, you know, think you have so many motives, you know, or that's just weird. That's just weird. You know, you tell another man you love him. That's weird. You know, that's, you know, my friends tease me, you know, Shantae Cornell, they tease me because they be like, Chris be like, he gonna give you the hug. You be wanting to give him the buffer. You know what I mean? You come in with the buffer, the hand, and then you come in with the hug. They be Chris don't be have no buffer. He just come in and hug. So it took me a long time, and it took many years to just accept that hey, I'm just not like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Or put it this way, how everybody else presents themselves to be based on this cultural image that they have feel like they have to portray, not to be called names or ostracized or judged, that sort of thing.
I wonder, does that come with age? Does it come with uh, therapy? Does that come with self-awareness or a little bit of everything? Probably just depends on where a person is of their own self-acceptance in their life. You know, I think it may be a combination of it all,
I think it's a
depending
combination
on,
of it all. Yeah, for me, it's a combination of it all
yeah.
because you know, and don't get me wrong, you know, it's also my village. You know, having somebody like you talk to me or having our mom, you know, who we respect a lot, if she, you know, saying things that she believes in you or recognizing your gifts and talents and stuff like that. And also, you know, just again, everybody has to have their goals. So my one of my personal goals in life is just to be and live in a way. I guess I ain't gonna say the master, but dang near master who I am, master myself, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is just always learning. You know, I don't want to leave when I leave this earth. I don't want to leave nothing undone that I was supposed to do, or nothing unsaid that I was supposed to say. Uh, and that includes not being not being dominated by anything in life in particular. You know what I'm saying? In terms of my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions. Uh, and that's why I'm always, you know, when you talk about development, you know, and what tools, that's why I'm always reading, you know, always reading books, uh, whether it's a self-help book or whether it's somebody's autobiography, because you can start seeing things as you get older. You talked about getting older, you start seeing areas of your life that, oh yeah, I remember I felt the same way this guy felt. You know, I just never heard it talked about. But you know what I mean? So I'm just always pouring into myself, you know, because I got started so late. You know what I mean? I got started so late. And because I, you know, in addition to getting therapy, what I looked for initially were just mentors, right? So what I got in therapy, it was what I looked for that in mentors. I looked for that at church with older men, pastors, and stuff like that. So, and I think a lot of men they do see they do see that as a model for themselves. They might not look for therapy, but they do look for leadership, and so sometimes they get into the coach, and they'll say something like, man, this coach, he was like a father figure to me. He taught me so much. That's therapy in itself, right? So depending on who that person is and you know how they taught you, a lot of times it's going to depend on how you project it back out into the world.
I love what you said, especially in the lines of mental illness, is mastering yourself. So when I think of mastering yourself, whether one has a diagnosis of bipolar, mental depression, anxiety, when you get certain types of diagnosis from a mental health professional, understand it, read about it, define it, ask the doctors, what is it? Define it for me. What does it mean? Yes. How did it get there? And another thing that, I'm understand the root of it. Where did it come from? Is he diagnosing a symptom? Is it the symptom? If it's the symptom, let's try to understand the root. Then you might need a therapist, because I'm learning also too that you can have a symptom of something. Say if a gentleman or man was sexually abused or physically abused at an early age, and so he has depression at an older age. You got depression, say at 30, so he's giving you a antidepressant med. So you take the med, but you ain't dealt with the child abuse.
Right.
So you got the med for the symptom, right, but you still got the root of the abuse. So you need the med and you need the counseling. So the med is not going to deal with the nightmare.
Not at all.
So you need both. So sometimes we'll take the med and think that's going to be the quick fix. That's not necessarily going to always handle the quick fix. It will, because what happens is you just take the meds and you still got the trauma. It kind of can work hand in hand. Right. If it's you got some PTSD or some other kind of trauma that you're dealing with, you don't take the med and you go to the counselor, but your body steady got anxiety going on because you got a chemical imbalance. Mm-hmm. You might need a med just to kind of go to sleep, mm-hmm, especially if you're finding that, you're taking some other, street pharmaceuticals,
Sure. Right.
You take them street pharmaceuticals, you don't take them for the doctor, but you go to the dude down, around the corner.
Down the way. Craig and
as
them.
the kids call it, the plug. You get Craig, to the plug.
Get the plug, yeah.
The plug. I don't want that from the doctor, but I'm gonna go to the plug. So you go to the other kind of doctor.
Yeah, he got that fire.
Yeah, the fire.
That good. Good. But yeah, you're right. You have to invest,
Absolutely.
You have to invest into yourself. That's the thing. Yeah. You do have to be curious, so I'm learning like what my triggers are, yes. And I think that.
Now, Chris, what is a trigger? Because some people don't know what triggers are.
Okay. So for me, you're a therapist. I'm not, but I'll tell you what I've never heard it defined, but I would say for me, a trigger is something that, causes a reaction, right? So, if you pull a trigger, then the bullet, pow, so a trigger for me, when you talk about emotions, is something that's said to you, something that's done to you. And then when that happens, that's going to set you off. Right. So one of my triggers is time. you know, people respecting my time, right? I try to respect other people's time as much as possible. So I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, right? And somebody don't respect my time, I'm like, I got an attitude when I come into it. You know what I mean? Another trigger is like I'm not one to. My boss figured this out about me alone when I was at Ceridian. John Bass, God bless his heart. He passed. He's a really great boss of mine. He's my boss for 11 years. And he said something about me one time. He said, "You know what, Chris? I found out about you. Like you really work hard, and you don't need nobody to pat you on the back. But if they try to take your shine from you, or try to act like you didn't do what you did, you're gonna have a problem. You know what I mean? So if they try to criticize my work, but I did exactly what I was told to do, and I knew the stuff was excellent. I'll be like, oh no, not no. You know what I mean? So it's not like you got to say, hey, great job. You know what I mean? I'll be all right if you don't. But if you come back and try to act like I didn't do it, or you taking it for granted, taking me for granted, right? If I feel like you taking me for granted, that's a trigger, right? That's a trigger. So, but and I noticed that I don't have a whole lot of. I give you another one. I'm not good with sudden change. So like if me and you we was out, if you said, Chris, I need you to drive to Kansas City, and then I need you to drive to Memphis, and then back to St. Louis, and do it all in a day, I'd be like, boy, okay. When I got to do that next week, okay, I get it in my head and I got it. We good, right? Boom, boom, boom. But then if we down if I'm down in Memphis or whatever, and you like, okay, no, okay, now I need you to go back to here, and then I'll be like, I'll be messed up. I'll be like, oh no, no, you know what I mean? Even if it's something like we're going to 3 stores, okay, we're gonna go to Walmart, we're gonna go to Kroger, and then we're gonna go to Dollar Store. Okay, that's cool. And then, oh man, you want to go to Chick-fil-A? Oh man, because I've already had it in my head that I'm gonna do this, this, and this spend this much time, then I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna relax, have me a cigar. You know what I'm saying? So I got it all planned out. But I'm here for you to do these 3 things that we said we was gonna do. And I'm totally present. And I'm totally supportive. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But if we gotta venture off into something different, that could be a trigger. Not every single time. I could be, oh, okay, whatever, whatever's clever. But if I got it in my head, we doing something that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a trigger for me.
Yeah. So
So if I come
triggers
home,
like,
if I come home from work, I'll come home like I may work my job, and then I come home for a minute. I go do a football game, couple basketball games, whatever. I come home, and I'm ready to get my stuff out and relax and get my drink or whatever. If Angie's like, but could you do this and do this and do this? I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? Because, but if she'd have told me before I came home, I need you to do this and do this and do this. Okay, it's in my head, it's in my routine. When I come home, I'm gonna do this. In addition to what I just did, it is cool, right? But when I start grabbing my stuff, hey, could you come over here and grab this? Could you take this outside? I'll be like it'll mess with me, right? So that's a trigger. So I've learned that. So it's better to learn that about yourself, and then that's something her and I can both talk about and work through. It don't mean don't ever ask me nothing and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It is something that I can recognize in myself, not to judge it harshly and be like, you just shouldn't be that way. Because it's another thing. Like you could talk yourself out of your core stuff. I've tried to do
mm,
that before. I've tried to. There are certain things about me as a core person that'll never change. Right? I'll never like somebody disrespecting my time. I can be like, I understand why you're late, you know what I mean, traffic or whatever, and be totally understanding with it. But I'm never gonna, it doesn't mean that I can't react better, but that's never gonna be, you know what I mean? That's never gonna change. So I think a lot of times in mental health, people try to change things and just don't realize this is who you are. That's part of knowing who you are and accepting those things. You don't even have to judge it as a flaw. People just are made up differently, and even in relationships, you learn how to deal with each other's, flaws. That what is a real flaw that you just need to deal with, and what is something that just a part of who you are that needs to be respected, that you need to maybe work on, how you implement it in society and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I think that's all circling back. So part of my mental health is accepting those things that, you know what I'm saying? And again, not judging them. you know, telling the truth about them, but not judging them as good or bad.
Now, it's interesting that you talked about acceptance. So one of the things that I think for me, when I work with probably most of my individuals, is understanding them. I study the people who I work with, or I try to. And I was talking with a gentleman the other day who is a musician. And so when I talk to musicians, or I have the pleasure of interacting with them, because the way they think, the musical mind and the notes and hearing sound, and just him noticing like the line more, just different sounds, and I'm like, okay, do you hear the ceiling fan? Like everything has a sound. So, him struggling cleaning up a house is like, oh, things that don't have a sound is probably very mundane. Right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, so I told him some things, like things that have a sound, it's more interesting than things that don't have a sound. So we're the menial things that don't have a sound, some kind of way, we have to infuse sound in that, because then it will have a meaning, right? So, some type of way, we're going to have to create a song when it comes to doing dishes. Some kind of way, we're going to have to write a song, or do it in a way that is creative, like listen to a tune while you're doing it, or put on a 5-minute song. Some kind of way, we have to make it sound. Like I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I was like, let's use what's already in you. If you want to talk about feelings and you're having trouble talking, but you can write a good poem, let's write a poem that talks about your feelings. Right. Let's try to use what you already have. Let's not reinvent the wheel.
Right. So talk about that, how important it is, because one of the things I've noticed that you talked about a lot is, especially early on in your career, you talked about, man, I learned all this stuff in the book, but these people I come across, they ain't got book stuff. So, you told me about having to get out of the box, and to tailor their treatment based on their needs from what you're studying of them. You know what I mean? And I think, I don't know, I've talked to more than one therapist, but some of them I've seen that I've dealt with, they just kind of to the book. You know what I mean?
I am so not in the book. I try to be in the book. I try to be in the book. And matter of fact, literally this week, like my office is a box. And so like this week, every time I went to work this week, it's like, oh, I'm going to the box. I'm going to the box. So on my window, that's in my, I got a window like the views into the box. I'm going to write this week, thinking outside of the box. Because I think people are uniquely made. Now, though, I do use some technique for the book, but we're so individually and so uniquely made. Just like our fingerprints are so uniquely made, I think things need to be created based off of that individual, because nobody is textbook. Very few people are textbook oriented. So why should I create a treatment plan that's textbook oriented? You might got a little of this and a little of this, and when you go back sometime and look at what they did the studies on, like when they created a certain modality for this particular group, I'll find that, well, how many Black people did they have in that? How many people did they have in that was in poverty? Because they didn't test everybody in the world. I mean, what group of people did they run that study on? Right. Was that anybody that I knew? Right. I just don't think there's one thing for everybody. So it takes you to sit down and just really pay attention to that person, to really focus in. And for me, pray, ask God, what does this person need? Because what they may need on their first session or their second session, do they need it on the third session?
So you have to be flexible. Do you find that therapists, that in your field, do a lot of them have that same kind of approach?
I don't know. I don't know. They may. I don't really know, because I guess I'm not in their
Sessions, yeah.
in their
Y'all
office.
never talk about your ideals and stuff like that, or
Mm-mm,
okay.
mm-mm. I write a lot. I do a lot of writing, and maybe have my clients to take a picture of it. Like if I write something on I call it like a big sticky paper,
Mhm.
and I want them to work on something. So, I love technology. The young people done taught me, you just take a picture of it, click,
Yes.
and then they can take it home and work on it. Because my thing is, I got to give you everything I got in case you never come back.
Yeah.
So that, some people come in and take notes, but for the most part, they can take a picture of it. Like for some of my individuals, say, who may say they working on social skills, I may meet them at a local coffee shop,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
just to kind of get them out
Okay.
in public. Let's just meet at a local coffee shop,
Okay.
interact with order you some coffee,
Okay.
kind of do that. I remember years ago, I worked with a young lady who she kind of really didn't have a childhood. So what we did, we made a tent in the office on a weekend when no one was there, and we had tea. We had make believe, like a whole little tent. Wow. In a little childhood thing. End up one time just going to the park and just kind of allowing her to grab some more basic stuff to develop, like some of those little kid things.
So you should have been Michael Jackson's therapist.
I could have.
Yeah, I always talked about he didn't have a childhood, you know what I mean? But
yeah, kind of go back
that's very
and allow that feeling, to allow that feeling of fresh air, no judgment, just allow yourself to feel that, even if it's just for a moment. Yeah. I remember working with a young lady. Oh man, this was really awesome because she had been, abused, but, and she was able to tell her story. And when she was able to tell a story, allow that to be a time of celebration, and not a time of, oh, I told my story, but a time of where we went and bought a cake and we wrote everything that she was able to tell. We wrote it on a balloon and let it go up into the air as a way to, like, I'm getting free from it. And we had cake and ice cream with her group. So she will always associate it. I told my story and I celebrated.
Yes.
So it won't be associated. I told my story and blah, I told my story and I celebrated with my group.
Right. See, so that's, again, it's a great example of something that therapy can do. So hopefully, the people who are listening, who are considering it, they can see that these are, I think a lot of people, when you asked me earlier about mental health, I think a lot of people, it's scary, to talk to a total stranger. You know what I mean? So I'm here to answer.
The thing about the stranger is there's no judgment.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a stranger, and I think maybe I don't know if they. I'm trying to think of myself. I think maybe I know there are times when I was scared that the person wouldn't have any answers for me. You know what I mean?
But the thing is, this is how I do it. For me, my clients are in the driver's seat. I'm in the passenger seat. The answers are already in you.
Right.
People are the best at their own lives.
Yes. Yes.
The only thing I'm doing is just following behind you, helping you get to where you need to get. I'm just like the cheerleader. Yes,
Right.
you can get there. You can get there. Yes, I'm going to cheer you on. But you are the best answer for your life.
Yeah. So
you're the expert.
do you what other questions do you have on just from a black male perspective? Because I know that's where we started. And we, obviously it's an organic conversation. We just chopped it up, but I want to make sure that I answer any other things that you had, or just talked about any other things that you had from a black male perspective. Obviously, your brother's a little different, always have been. So I don't know, it just seemed like certain things that certain males do, or the way certain of them think. I've never thought that way. You know what I mean? I've just always, we got some similarities just being men, but there are other things that are a little bit different. You know what I mean? I've always was a sensitive kid, that sort of thing. I was always in touch with my feelings, but so I'm saying from that perspective, it would have been hard for me to think how other people thought, you know what I mean? But at the same time, anything that maybe I could relate to.
I guess from a guy who has guy friends who, we all know some people, we both know individuals who go to counseling, but I don't know, other than men who come see me, how do you feel like the gentlemen that what are their takes on counseling?
Well, again, I think nowadays, because the guys I know are older, right? I think that they understand it. When we talk about sports, we talk about Naomi Osaka, and her dipping out, of some tennis matches, and dealing with her mental health with whether it's the questions or whether it's the spotlight or whatever, and we talk about it critically, that hey, on one hand, she's like, I lose the match and I don't want to answer these questions, I'm gonna break down and cry. On the other hand, she might be on Instagram, making her millions of dollars with her endorsement deals, right? So it's like, you control the narrative there, but it's narrative over here you can't control. So, I think even when you're talking, again, mental health, I think it's also critical, not that you have to judge it, but it's okay to talk about, okay, sometimes you just tripping. It might not even be a mental health thing, right? It just may be some immaturity, or, because there's time and space for everything, even in the Bible, a time to kill, a time to live, what I'm saying? A time to sow, a time to reap, So there's a time, I think, for, hey, you could do this, go on out there and get it done, right? And that's part of you having to challenge yourself. I think you have to be able to, in a nuanced way, talk critically about those things too. Are you just tripping? Are you just giving yourself excuses? And if that's the case, again, you don't have to judge it, but you can acknowledge it and say, okay, this is what I'm gonna do better, right? Because I think sometimes, things go in trends. So sometimes, while now it's good and people are talking about mental health, you don't want somebody to use that as an excuse, for themselves, not to us as the judging public, if you will, but just to themselves.
Well, I think sometimes, I guess, in order to kind of know the difference, when you're looking at, is it just I'm tripping, or is it a mental health issue?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to depend on how long is this a problem.
Yeah.
Is this an extended time period? Is this going on for several weeks? Something called the DSM, which is how they make the criteria if something is a mental illness or not. Is this 4 weeks? Is this 6 weeks? There's a criteria in which mental illnesses must meet, dependent on weeks, consistency, longevity, so, in order to meet that, you need to see a mental health professional, just like mental, a regular doctor. If it's something, is it your heart, or are you having a panic attack, or are you having a heart attack? You need to see which one is it, because sometimes a panic attack can look like a heart attack and vice versa. It just kind of depends. So, if it's something that is ongoing, if it's you depressed for more than 2 or 3 weeks, then yeah, you might want to go out there and see what's going on. Even if it's something that has to do with a thyroid, some of all of that can look alike. You got to seek out your medical professional, one way or another. Because I remember years ago having a lot of anxiety, like crying all the time, flipping out, tripping, and it was my thyroid was off. It was like at whatever it was, but it was off the charts. And yeah, I couldn't sleep. So it looked like anxiety. It felt like anxiety. I mean, I had to do something like take a test, and I couldn't take the test. I was shaking. I was nervous, and my thyroid was off. So
Yeah.
you definitely got to, weigh it. You got to weigh to kind of see, is this situational? We're dealing with a lot of grief right now, or, is it long-term grief? If somebody just passed away, there's some natural grief going on. If it's some, you're not eating, you got to look at a lot of things. It's people who are not sleeping. Can you not sleep for a reason? If you're not sleeping 3 or 4 days, why aren't you sleeping? Is this a medical thing? Is this a psychological thing? Do you need to seek medical? Seek somebody. Just don't not sleep.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think again, when you talk about, again, I guess I'm talking about my own friends, like you said, but I think one of the things we do with each other is we gauge, we're there as a listening board, and I think sometimes that helps a lot too. You might not need it there. Sometimes you just need an ear.
Absolutely.
But again, we're truthful enough with each other to say, hey man, I got a great book on this, or I think it'd be a good idea if you go see somebody, about this.
I love that.
It's still their choice, right? It's still their choice. We're still not judging it, right? And I think, man, so maybe that's really a big thing, man, is just to have genuine relationships, because people who love you, they could tell you, you know, uh, they could tell you where your blind spots are, right? And love.
Absolutely.
They can tell you, they can see things that maybe you can't see. And so, yeah, we do help each other that way, because you
I
don't know,
love that.
yeah, always need a therapist. But I think a lot of, even Darcel working with kids and stuff, a lot of times the kids are so angry, and I'm sure you see this all the time. I could be on the football field. The kids are so angry. A lot of times, where I used to be, and I'm still this way. So this is an area where it's a trigger, but I'm getting better. And actually, I'm getting better at not only managing this trigger, but understanding how not to just fall back on it because that's the way I am. Prime example. I don't like, one of my triggers is disrespectful kids, right? So I'll be like, man, shoot, I'm from East St. Louis, man. We ain't grow up like that. You know what I mean? So get yourself together, right? So that was a situation where I was getting my flu shot, and this sister had this big old cart, and this cart was full, and she asked the young man to push the cart, and he was like, no. She said, you ain't gonna push that. He was like, no. He got back on his phone, and I'm like, so this is the trigger. So I'm like, hey man, you better take care of that. So he put the phone down, and he smiled at me, and she looked at me, and she's like, oh, so you gonna do it now, huh? You gonna do it now? And then she gave me a thumbs up, and I just pretty much, I kind of acknowledged her, but I'm still looking at this young man, you know. And I'm like, hey man, that's always. This is the way life is. You do this every single time, you know. And he smiled and went on about his business. So that was a trigger to where, okay, I stepped to him in love, but I was very direct, right? He don't know me. He could have been like, man, you ain't my fucking daddy, you know what I'm saying? But that was a right, but that's also a love. So, but there are other times where it used to would piss me off to see a kid, cussing, acting a fool on the field and stuff, or don't want to listen to you, right? Hey man, just roll off the pile, man. You don't push the man while he's on the ground, and they be, man, did you hear what he said to me? Did you hear what he did? And so before I just was the old school, hey, get on over there to the sideline. Now I'd be like, all right, man, tell me what happened. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna watch out for that. But I want you to be all right. Okay. I want you to be all right. I don't want you to get kicked out this game, miss a game, and then tomorrow you ain't gonna even be tripping off of it, right? So go on, man, stay with me, guy. I got you. You know what I mean? And they be like, oh, thanks, ref. Okay, I appreciate that. You know what I mean? It changes the whole, you know what I mean? And that's like you could tell like something else was wrong with him. It didn't have nothing to do with this game. You know what I'm saying? He probably mad at his
Exactly.
teachers. You never know what's going on at home. And so they got all this anger, this rage. And so it's like football is an opportunity to just go take it out on somebody. It ain't even about the scoring touchdowns. I get to hit somebody and not get arrested for it, right? so just to hear them seeing me take an interest in them, sometimes that makes a difference. So that's again a trigger that I've learned to, I'm not trying to change the trigger. It is what it is. That stuff irks me. But I love these kids, and I see them for where their pain is more so than what their actions are. You know what I mean? There's a cause and effect.
And it's something that you said that with the kids, because of course, I worked with kids before. And so, it's a lot of schools are becoming, I'm not going to say all of them, or they should be becoming more trauma informed.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking at mental illness, and, of course, we grew up in a domestic violence home. And so, in growing up in a domestic violence home and then experiencing it myself, I was, of course, totally opposite of you. So I grew up with attitude. You were like the nice, soft, cool kid. I was like, no, I'm the kid. Oh, I'm the kid from hell. You
Yes,
know what
sir. Yes, sir.
I'm the kid. I'm probably going to be like hell on wheels, right? Like I was my mama's worst nightmare.
Yep.
So when you grow up in a home like that, sometimes you already come out of the gate ready to swing and fight. So those are the kids sometimes that's on the football field that's what you're dealing with, too. They're ready to fight. They're ready to get somebody, or they ready to knock a block off, and because they're coming out of a home that kind of looked like our home. They didn't come out like you. They probably came out more like me.
Right. But why you tripping though? Why you tripping, it's not like I came out better. I came out, you reacted right away. I reacted later.
Yeah, that's true.
You see what I'm saying?
True.
So it's not like I just got off. I just internalized the stuff, right? Because I'm like, that's life.
Right.
Everybody's life is like this, right? You was the one, yeah, you was the one reacting, in real time. I'm gonna be rebellious. I'm gonna be on the phone. Like Darcel, y'all, she would be on the phone, like she be on punishment. So punishment for a teenager in the late 70s, early 80s, you can't use the phone, right? Because we didn't have cell phones. And mama be upstairs. We was living in Indiana. She be upstairs in her bed watching TV. Darcel be in the basement on the phone. Like, don't get on that phone. Darcel be like,
whatever.
Girl. And
I never obeyed. Just totally rebellious.
She just
never
gonna get another whooping. Oh my God.
Oh, I'm finna get another whooping. I'm good. Whoop me. I think when I get whoopings up to 18, I ain't care.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember one time you handed me the phone. You was like, Chris, so you talking to your friend? And I was like, hello. Mom was like, Chris, come upstairs. Come in my room. I was like, it's like, I said, want me to lie? I can't lie, no. Was that your phone? No.
You gonna get it again. Oh well.
Yeah, but no, so no, I repressed. And so I think, the stuff with daddy, we was homeless and stuff like that. Lights go off. All of that stuff was repressed. South Bend, crazy stepfather, calling me names, you know what I mean? Verbally abusive, all repressed, right? So, I looked like I was okay, but as you well know from experiencing, I was far from it, because all of that stuff was repressed.
And it's something, and so it makes you kind of think, is it better to react in real time, or is it better to repress it and come out later?
I think you blessed if you make it out on the other side, because listen, I listened to a podcast called Ear Hustle. And ear hustle is a term that people use when they eavesdropping on somebody. That's what they say they do in jail. So it's a podcast about prison life in San Quentin. So a lot of those guys, when you hear their testimonies and their stories, they did what you did. They reacted in real time, but it often landed them in jail, right? So now you got a lifetime decision. You got a lifetime of things. Your life being affected. To where you got a felony, or you spending 30 years. Because you killed somebody. You got, hey, what set you repping? You know what I'm saying? Rolling 60s, fool. You know what I'm saying? And then, oh, he disrespected my set. You know what I mean? So now, but I'm reacting off to all the other stuff that's been going on in my life, right? Plus a cap in them. Now you in jail or dead, right? In my case, it was like, okay, I repress, depression, suicidal thoughts and tendencies, right? No hope, no self-love. So either one could have led to death, right? That's what I'm saying. You're blessed if you get out on the other side and get to a place where you can start some self-discovery, learn self-love, man, because I could tell you all the stuff I never thought. Like, I remember not thinking I was going to live to 30, not for any particular reason. I remember never thinking to myself that I could really accept myself for who I was and be happy with it. Like, that was a total foreign concept. You know what I mean? So yeah.
And that's weird, because I think when I was little, I'm used to think I ain't gonna never die.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, but you're in the same house, and we just react in two different ways, right? And plus, you're 4 years older than me, so different makeups, but that's the fun of it.
And it's interesting because when you was repressed, and unfortunately, I guess I was 21, and where you was pulling away from our dad, I was trying to fight him. Like, we finna fight. Yeah. He did this, and I'm fighting you.
Right.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Even after he died, I felt bad that he didn't get the help. I felt bad that I wasn't aware enough to where I could say, Daddy, you know what? I'll go with you, to see someone. And that's another thing when I talk about my life's goal. Like, I don't want anything to dominate me that way. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to have any issues. I want to be free. I want to be a free Black man, right?
I love that.
And so that's my ultimate goal in life. That's why I seek, and that's why I listen, and spread. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a glue guy. So when I'm on my, I've learned this about myself. I'm a glue guy. So on my team at work, I'm the guy that'll do whatever needs to be done so everybody can be happy doing their jobs. On my football crew, I'm doing two different positions. Normally we do one and we just stay there. But there's certain circumstances where one of our guys is asked to do a certain position on certain games for a certain conference. So I'm pretty much the only one that was willing to say, okay, I'll switch every other week. A lot of guys, they just would never do that. But to me, it's cool. You know what I mean? I just want to see us get better. I want to see us do this thing and be successful. I'll roll with it, right? But it took me a long time, right? I'm still I'm a great leader, but I'm also a great follower. See,
Absolutely.
but I know when to be a leader. I know, okay, this is the time they need me to lead here, and I'll do it. But we got a strong crew, and you just need me to fit in this little cog over here, and that's gonna make the machine go. I'm good with that too, right? I could be subservient and in authority, you know, on the same day in two different situations. I'm flexible like that. It's whatever's needed, right? So I learned it about myself, right? And that's something I can embrace.
I could tell that we're cut from the same cloth because I used those same terminologies last week. Number one, I used the word freedom because I got something, and I got this from one of my pastors years ago. Free, and I wrote this on my little sticky board with one of my clients. Freedom does feel good. You ought to want to be free. And in order to be a good leader, you have to be a very good follower because it takes both to be successful.
It takes both.
It takes both to be a leader and to be a follower and you need to know when to flow and which one.
You do. You do. It's like, especially like, areas of unknown, right? So areas of unknown, I'm usually laid back, right? So I remember the first time I ever refereed a game, meaning that a football game, meaning that I was the head person. I was the one calling the holes and, doing all the signals and, I report and all that kind of stuff, other than just being on the sideline. So, normally I would come in, like I started field hockey this year. So I tell a person, hey, I'm new. If you see anything, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm very more so passive, just trying to learn. Well, I went to another situation like that where the person that was with me was new, right? So even though I'm not, really great at this job yet, I see that this person's like, they looking like I was 6 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? Like a deer in the headlight. So I write right away. Oh, you don't know how to do that? You don't know how to, oh, I'll be the art. Don't worry about it. I got it. You know what I mean? Okay, coaches, let's go. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Never done that before in my life at that point. You know what I'm saying? Never done it in my life. Just follow me. I got you. And all of a sudden, all the things that I learned that never clicked or wouldn't really click when I was following that other person trying to, now all of a sudden I'm seeing it all because by necessity, I see that I need to be this for this other person.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And part of what I want to do is instill confidence in them and not let them feel so lost the way I felt. And so that whole motivation right there kicks a trigger into me. But again, that's something I learned, right? You know, and so now I'm okay with either way. Like it just doesn't bother me. There are people I know who are, they're just straight alphas. You know what I mean? They straight alphas. And when they delegate to help you grow, right? So my friend Blue's like that. He could pretty much anything that's going on, he could run it and be fine. But there are times now I notice in his leadership abilities that he'll be like, I'm gonna let you do this. Because he just, well, I don't know how to do that. No, you'll be fine. I got confidence in you. You know what I mean? If you got any questions, let me know. So then they just opened up a path. You got questions, let me know. You're not by yourself. But I want to see you do this. Now you're going to grow into. See what I'm saying? Leaders always grow in other people.
Absolutely.
Right. But again, you have to know who you are, so you're not trying to be like the next person, because you know there'll never be another Christopher. You know what I'm saying? There'll never be another Darcel. We may have similar qualities to other people, but there'll never be another. So you got your own time dispensation, abilities, liabilities, that you have to put all in the soup, you know what I'm saying, to do your thing, and to work towards their freedom. So that's what excites me. That's what excites me.
Something I want to hit on definitely before we leave is especially when dealing with mental illness is suicide.
Sure.
Which is pretty big now.
Sure.
Suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations. Um, when you have thoughts, because I know you've been there before. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
When do people need to get help you know, when those thoughts become overwhelming, or they begin to be, when is it time? You know, I know you mentioned earlier, you know, having those people to, you know, in your village, or those partners, or somebody you can reach out to say, hey, I'm not thinking right. Something is not clear, you know, you know, even if you have an inkling, you know, people who are on the outside, not being afraid to ask. Asking somebody, are they suicidal, does not make one suicidal. You know, for all the listeners, if you, when in doubt, ask the question. You know, if you feeling somebody's too dark, ask people, are you suicidal? Don't be afraid. That doesn't bite.
Yeah,
So Chris, tell me about that.
Even if you're afraid of the word suicide, you can say, I might not want to be here anymore. So I know for me, when I felt that way, you know, uh, it was just a feeling of hopelessness, right? And so, you know, hopelessness, unworthiness, uh, you don't see, it's like a block, right? And you feel like, so, that's another thing. Like, I think that people used to say all the time, you know, let's refresh from a religious perspective, well, you're going to hell because you can't get forgiveness, or those people are so weak, they just gave up, and actually, it takes a lot of courage, believe it or not, to do something to harm yourself to get up out of here. So that's a misnomer. That's a misnomer to say people are weak or cowards. You know, that's a lie. Because and then don't get me wrong, there are degrees. Sometimes people just think that because that's the way out. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of different levels to it. But I know for me, there were two parts. The first was just straight up, hey, I don't want to be here, and you know, that was like back in, when your mom came to the door, and that was one of the things I had talked to her about. It wasn't out of desperation. I wasn't like, you know, uh, gee, my life is so horrible, I'm going to kill myself. It was like, I just want to be, I'm tired, and I didn't, again, there's a whole lot of reasons, didn't have the self-love and all of that, and then another level though that I've had before is feeling like, okay, well, I'm not suicidal, but if I ever get super down, if things get worse to the worst, I can always kill myself. You know, so that's another level, right? That's not a danger level to where it's something you're thinking about contemplating and planning and stuff. It's just to say it's a fail safe. You know what I mean? The worst thing that can happen is this, right? Uh, so they're just different levels, and I think if you feel a certain type of way like that for, like, say, more than a few hours, more than a day, if you sleep on it and wake up and feel that way, then I would say, yeah, you do want to reach out to somebody. And again, and I don't think, I always say, you ain't, I mean, you just got to go the opposite way of what people may think is logical. Hey, if that's something you really want to do, can't nobody stop you from doing it. But you may learn something that could change your whole philosophy about this thing. You know what I'm saying? So to me, if I was talking to somebody that was really on the cusp of that, I wouldn't be trying to say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, because they already told themselves that, or talked them, or went past the point of being able to, where that would be a reasonable thing. But if you were able to empathize with a person, if you were able to understand and accept that that's the way they're feeling now, and then offer something to say, but it doesn't mean it's going to be this way forever. It doesn't mean that this is where you are with the information you have now. But with more information, right, you may change your outlook. One of the things I appreciated about both Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X is they were willing to change. New information gave them new, perspectives on life. So, at first Malcolm was like, hey, white man, he's the devil. You know what I'm saying? White people can't do nothing for me, blah, blah, blah. That's where he was. But then later on, he went to Mecca, You know, he saw all the white people that was worshiping and all that kind of stuff, and he was like, "Oh man, they just like me." So he had a Western culture, you know, Midwest, and then East Coast, American oppression, legacy of white supremacy, you know, whole entire history from where his viewpoint was. And then when he went to Africa and saw all these people of different colors believing the same thing that didn't have the legacy of white supremacy, didn't have the legacy of chattel slavery, right? And then he's like, oh, well, these white people are my enemy, right? So, but he was willing to, in a very public forum, change his stance. So he wasn't just going to die on that hill, right? Like some people are doing now. The election was stolen. I'm going to die on that hill, right? So he didn't die on that hill. He got new information and he was willing to change his message. So the same way with suicide. You may be here right now, but this other information that you've yet to learn, that you haven't given yourself a chance, or you know, at least see what's out there. You can always do it, but you ain't got to do it today. See what I'm saying? And sometimes people just hearing that is freeing. So, oh wow, and you'll go with me? Yeah, I'll go with you. Or you know, I'll just go with you and sit out in the hallway if you don't want me. You know what I'm saying? I'll go with you and just drop you off and come back and scoop you up. And then if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. If you don't, you don't. But I think that your life is valuable and you do have something to offer, or else you wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not going to try to talk you out of that, but I will try to help you see something else that may change your mind. It just may.
You know, I love that idea. So like, watch this. I love this. So Chris, like, what do you see in my background?
I see the many times you have changed your frame.
Just tell me, what do you see? What do you see?
Okay. I see an elephant. I see the lamp up there that spins around and the things flap open.
Yeah.
I see the black thing. I see the fireplace behind you. I see the chair. I see the welcome and the different pieces on the inside of the blocks.
Okay.
The white and the different colors.
Okay. So now, what do you see now?
I see a kitchen table, the backyard. Is that a speaker back there? No, that's just a piece. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's a totally different view.
Okay. So the idea behind this is I never left the room. I never left the chair. Right. The idea is that sometimes we just need a different perspective. We're in the same spot. I never left the chair. The only thing I did was turn my bottom around and turn my computer around.
Yes.
A different perspective sometimes give us a totally different view when it comes to life. And so sometimes when we're dealing with thoughts of suicide or anything that's going on in our life, if we have to take the time, whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, or even 30 minutes, if we'll be willing to take the extra time to give ourselves time. I mean, because the only thing we got is time. And the thing I love about time is that it continues to move on. This minute will never look like the last minute. Today will never look like yesterday. Our tomorrow will not look like today. Last week doesn't look like the coming week. Last month doesn't look like last month. It constantly changes, but yet sometimes we get stuck and we think we'll just always be here, but we don't. So the thing is about time is that it always moves, and long as it's moved, we always have the opportunity to shift our thought process or to shift our perspective. And so if we live like that and understand that when suicidal thoughts come along, if we just take the time or give ourselves enough time, which is going to go by anyway.
Yeah, I would say I got another good friend of mine whose son was going through it, and he kicks himself to this day because he felt like, I was telling him to toughen up, man up, and that sort of thing, and I was about to lose my son, had no idea, because he was just ignoring those signs. So that's another thing, that I would say to people, it's just, hey man, don't judge people. Don't look at them like they're weak, or don't try to, you know, it's not like mental illness or things, dealing with mental challenges or what have you are new. It's just that I think the opportunities are now there to talk about them. More than I got more than a few good guy friends whose sons are battling depression, you know, battling depression, even pandemic wise. You know what I'm saying? So in the stories are, somewhat similar. They either go from I don't understand because I've never felt that way to I tried to toughen them up, tell them to buck up, and he gonna be all right. You know what I mean? But I think, again, you don't have to understand something to accept it. I like to say that all the time. In it being in a marriage, I don't always understand everything my wife thinks or is going through, and neither does she. But what I try to tell her, if we don't understand each other, she feels like she just don't not getting where I'm coming from. I'm like, well, that's okay. You don't have to understand because we're two different people, but can you respect where I'm coming from? You know what I mean? And the same thing I want to do for her. I want to be able to respect and accept what the reality is, even if I don't understand. You know what I mean? So, because at the end of the day, who wants to lose someone else due to suicide or through an overdose, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times suicide, you don't know it's suicide. You thought it was just an overdose. They knew what they was doing.
Yeah. And the thing is, one thing that I want to make sure that suicide doesn't always mean they have mental illness. Because you
No,
can,
of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
yes, people sometimes like, well, I didn't know they had mental illness. No, suicide does not always mean they have a mental illness.
No, not at
You
all.
can just you can just commit suicide and they don't have to have a mental illness,
Yeah, they can be very methodical, well thought out, thing. And a lot of times it is.
Yeah.
A lot of times for teenagers and stuff, it is. They didn't thought about it. They didn't, you find out they didn't got their affairs in order, you know what I'm saying? Whatever's going on at school with their friends, they didn't say their goodbyes, and the person was like, I thought he was acting a little strange today. You know what I'm saying? They didn't say that, they don't work that stuff out. But it, like you said, it doesn't always equate to one thing or the other. But again, we don't have to diagnose, we don't have to judge, but we do want to be aware, and we want to have respect because, but for the grace of God, I'm telling you. And as you know, in the brain, it's just, you know what I mean? You could bump your head. You could bump your head and your whole world could change.
Yeah.
The brain is a very sophisticated tool,
Absolutely.
organ. It really is. And so there has to be a level of respect, for what people are going through, what their journeys are, and the effects that this world, has on people. And that's one of the things I'm thankful for. So like I was telling Gabrielle, I don't tell you what I thought or what I learned. I tell you what it is because I know this is reality, right? I'm not getting this from a book. I'm telling you that this is what I lived and I know this to be true. But if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't know it to be true. So there's also something redeeming in the worst days of your life when you can come back from the other side of them because you're there now. You could be a bridge for somebody else.
Exactly. And I love, one thing, especially the more we get into this techie world, pay attention to people, listen to people's behavior. Oftentimes we want to, we always say, look at people's behavior. Sometimes you just need to listen to their behavior, use your ears, listen to people's behavior, notice with your ears, listen to what people are saying, not just look at what they are doing, because we look at things like this. We're talking to you, but we're looking like this. Sometimes just put your phone down.
That's another great thought. That's something that I'm currently working on, right? Giving people your undivided attention.
Look at people in their eyes. I make it a point.
Yeah.
Pay attention to people, back like the old days, unfortunately. Sometimes we just need to get back to real basic stuff.
Yeah, and then you have to, and then this is something I heard John Amici say in his book, The Promise of Giants, he talked about in his organization, that's one of the things that they talk about is setting that example of giving someone your full attention. And he puts it this way. A lot of people say that's nice. No, I'm not here to be nice, right? It's not about being nice, because nice can almost be like, a pejorative type of word where, it's just like, yeah, that's nice. I'm like courteous, right? But what it is actually good for the team. It makes the team feel more productive that you sat there and listened to them, that you did put your phone down. You wasn't like this, it's funny because, again, that's something I can always relate it back to my life. That's the one thing about my podcast. I always talk about my life. So I ain't got to talk about nobody else's. They ain't feel like I'm putting them on Front Street. I tell my wife the same thing. I'll be like, baby, like, especially if I'm telling her something important, I'm like, oh, man, I'm this. If she like this, I just get quiet. I'll stop in the middle of my sentence. And she'd be like, I'm listening. I'll be like, no, baby, like, this is important. Like, I need your undivided. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but it's a good practice to have all the time, because when you take that time to invest and, like you said, look at people and hear them, it just makes for a better team. It's not just being nice again. It's progressive. It's poignant. It's with a purpose.
Absolutely.
Right. So anyway, before you go, I know you got to go. We both got some stuff to do. However, I do want to ask you just a couple quick questions. If somebody's thinking about a therapist, and they got some fears, I think that one of the things is, like, you have to, again, be a participant in your own therapy. And I remember talking to a therapist not long ago, and then, the next step, I was sending an email, and I was like, hey, what do you think about what you heard? What kind of strategies you think were, like, used that would maybe be of help? You know what I'm saying? I don't want you to just ask me how I'm feeling. Well, how do you feel today? You know what I'm saying? Like, it needs to be, I need to come away empowered. So when I had Miss Francis, I would come out of there empowered, right? You know what I mean? I'd start talking and she talk, and I got a task, I got something to work on, I got something different than I came in with, right? So what do you recommend people, kind of questions people should ask when they see a therapist?
Well, first of all, I think it depended on what you want to work on. So, like I tell people all the time, if you want to work on things that's like from the past, because you don't have to always dig up past stuff. Some people don't want to work on past stuff. So some people may not want to work on trauma. You may, maybe you want to work on trauma stuff. So you may want to see a trauma therapist. Some people may recognize, well, I just got this, these irrational thoughts that keep coming. So you might want to work more with a therapist that want to work on your cognitive distortions. You got some irrational thinking, going on. Some people might want to work on more like client-centered behavior. Whatever I want to talk about, I might want to just talk about goals, some things that I kind of want to sort out for the future. I don't want to deal with that trauma stuff. I ain't got no trauma issues. I want to maybe work more short-term goal therapies. I want to do this like for, 6 months. This is what I want to do in 3 months. Maybe it's a grief therapy. I just can't quite seem to get past, all the trauma that happened in the last year. I lost this person, or I lost this person. I have multiple things dealing with grief and loss. There's different types of therapy. Maybe I gotta.
Yeah, it's good to know that there are people that specialize
in certain things. Maybe I got gambling addiction or pornography addictions. It's different types of addictions, or substance abuse addictions. So depending on what your particular thing is, that you can begin to look up certain types. So like even psychology today, you can look that up depending on your zip code, whether you're in whatever city you may be even, looking at this in. You can look up psychology today, put your zip code in, see what comes up in your area. And then you can look at all kind of counseling, or even what kind of psychologist is in your area, or psychiatrists or even your area. Psychiatrists more so, or MDs, they're doctors that do more prescribing with meds. Psychologists kind of deal more with testing. Counselors deal more so with talk therapy, do some testing. You got counselors that deal with adolescents, some that specifically more work with eating disorders. Maybe you have an eating disorder, that, you're bulimic, or, you got different counselors for that particular issue. So yeah, whatever you think that issue is, it's better if you wouldn't want to go to a foot doctor. You got a problem with your heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I like what you said, that there even like the people you could just talk to about your goals. So, I think the I never thought about that, but that's also something, again, you can go at your own pace. You know what I mean? You can talk about things you want to talk about, not things you don't want to talk about.
Absolutely.
Because
everybody don't want to bring up trauma, especially right. Somebody, say if you got somebody in their 20s or 30s and they've been in foster care half their life. They probably already dug up a whole bunch of traumatic stuff for a whole bunch of years. Well, I'm 20. I've been talking about foster care and trauma stuff for 15 years. I don't even want to talk about that no more.
Right. I hear you. Is there anything else you want to leave the people with?
Check Psychology Today. If you want to reach out, if you're in Missouri, you can always call me.
How do people reach you if they're in Missouri? How do they reach you?
If they want to reach me, you can always call me. You can call my cell phone, 314-363-3126. And then, or text me. I can swoop you through my Google number like that, being that I don't know it by heart, but yeah, you'll come through that. If you're a guy and want to talk to a guy, I do work with, it's called Humble Monarchy, Humble Monarch Therapy. Their number is 314-530-8726. He's a young man that I work with. He's an African-American man. If you're more comfortable, if you are a man and want to talk with a man, he actually is a man therapist. Wow. That will be good. If you're thinking about or considering suicide here in Missouri, they have BHR, which is Behavior Health Response. Not quite sure what that number, but you can Google it. They're 24 hours. They're always there to talk to you. If you're in Columbus, I'm sure they have numbers that you can Google in Columbus to look up and call. But yeah, reach out to somebody. You're not alone. There are people that can help you and walk you through.
I think that's good. And also I think it's important to let people know that, there are plenty of therapists that, some take insurance, some don't, some go by your income. The therapist I had, Miss Francis, she went by your income, so I think I ended up giving her like $25, so I can't speak on somebody else's prices. I'm just saying that a lack of insurance or a lack of, income, even if you're making minimum wage, there's still people out there who they got into this business to help. That's what they did. And so the only thing I would want to leave people with is just, take it from me, man. People are just people. People are just people.
Absolutely.
We all want the same things in life generally. We want to be happy. We want to have something that we're working on that means something to us. That's another thing. Being creative also helps with your mental health. Just me doing this podcast because it's something I love to do. I'm going to walk away and I don't know. I never look at them over again, but I don't know how people are going to feel about the program. Was I all over the place? These are all things that just go on in my head, right? But I'm going to release it just the way it is. You know what I mean? Because it's organic, and if it just reach one person, that's fine. But when I walk away from this because I did something creative, I'm going to feel like I accomplished something. That's also part of mental health. If you're not doing something that you love, if you're not doing something creative that you care about, if it's work and you get to pay for that, then that's great. But if it's not, You don't have to get paid to do the thing that you love. And when you do some, whether it's writing, whether it's reading, something, I don't care if it's putting a puzzle together, you'll feel better. That's good work-life balance. That's good thing, so it's a lot of little things that you can do, but we're just people, and it's okay, man. You have to give yourself permission to be human. That's what
Yeah.
I believe the people with. Give yourself permission to be human. Don't be shamed. Shame is a killer. Shame is a thief. You know, Shame leads to things like regret. You know what I mean? And who wants to have that? Like, I don't want to have. I may have remorse. You know what I'm saying, for certain things, but I don't want to live a life of regret, right? Uh, and to me, the ultimate regret is when you're at the end of your time and you had opportunity to do something to make it better, but you didn't. Uh, and I just think that life is so precious. It's such a gift. And the one thing about life is you're not gonna see you're not gonna see ahead of time everything that all the possibilities. You're not gonna see it ahead of time. Um, but your journey is still taking you. If you get on a plane and you go to overseas, well, you can't see England when you get on the plane and look out the window, but there's somebody that knows where they're going that's gonna get you there, right? And so that's the same way with life. You may not, there are times when I couldn't imagine certain things that I've learned now that have made my life so much better. But you don't get to see that ahead of time.
Right.
You don't get to see that ahead of time. You have to go through the journey. It's part of the journey. Embrace the journey. It's okay. Learn to embrace this journey. People like Kobe Bryant, and they talk about the Mamba mentality. And one of the things he talked about was, hey, people cheer when I get to 60 points and when I dunk on people, this, that, and the other. But and that's all good. But what I really enjoy most of all? The mundane times that I'm in the gym, nobody's around, and I'm working on my stuff because I know that I'm building something up. I'm working on something that I love and adore. And even these tedious things that I'm doing, you know, he's building something within himself. And then when he goes and shows it in the marketplace, we look at it and be like, how amazing. And to him, yeah, it was cool. When it was most amazing? When nobody else was looking.
Yeah.
And so he learned to love the journey. There are times when I've won championships in different sports, and they were always somewhat anticlimactic. It didn't mean as much to me as the practice time or the memories in the locker room with the guys, the things we talked about. I remember times where we were all so mad at each other, and I remember this is 1992. I remember it was guys were just arguing with each other, and I just started crying because I felt like my team was coming apart, and I didn't like the way we were talking to each other. You know what I mean? And after that, man, everybody just like got out of themselves, right? And we bonded as a team, and we just beat the brakes off of everybody after that. You know what I'm saying? But my guys didn't look at me like, oh, he weak. Look at what is this, basketball game? You know what I'm saying? But no, it was the relationships. To me, it was the mundane. So we have to find our own mundane. I'm gonna stop because we can go on forever. But maybe we'll do this again another time. But I'm just saying, there's so much out there, and we have to learn how to prioritize not just the results, but the journey, the grind.
I like
Prioritize
that.
that, and then you enjoy the fruits on the other side. But if you're always looking at the results and not learning how to love the mundane nuance, little pieces of restoring certain things back to your psyche, back to your mentals, putting things in your toolbox and learning how to practice them here and there, in little unconsequential areas, you can practice them. So, like patience. I don't pray to God give me patience, because then you just gonna have to wait. So now when I get in situations like that, and I hate waiting, I just be chilling.
You know
I'm
what?
gonna have to wait. I'm gonna have to wait anyway, right?
You
So
gotta
that's
wait anyway.
you gotta wait anyway. So I'm just gonna chill. I'm not gonna cuss. Just gonna
Just
chill.
gonna
But
chill.
it takes time. It takes time.
You know what? One of the things I hate. we love coming up with these little things, right? So I asked this one of the guys who sometimes kind of sad. And so I asked him one day, I said, I understand that you're sad and you kind of don't want to get out of the bed. And he was like, yeah. I said, if the building caught on fire, what would you do? He was like, huh? He said, if the building caught on fire, what would you do? He was like, well, get out the room. I said, really? I said, so if the building caught on fire, you would leave the room. He said, yes. I said, well, how quick will you get out? He said, fast. I say, even if you're depressed? He said, yes, I'm going to get out fast. I say, so is it safe to say that you need to find your fire? He was like, okay.
Right.
I say, so
that's an excellent example, right?
You need to find your fire. So I would tell our listeners to find your fire. Whatever gets you out of your comfort zone, whatever gets you to moving, you need to find it. Whatever that fire is, you need to find your fire.
Yes. And the last thought of that is, like I said, even in finding your fire, there is an individual, portion of your journey, 100%. But at the same time, you're not going to get there alone. There are no such thing as self-made person. No such thing. That's a fallacy. Man. That's an American thing, American exceptionalism. He started from the bottom, now, that sort of thing. But no, man, everybody, I don't care who you are, you needed some help along the way. So don't be afraid to embrace the help. You got times where certain things nobody will ever be able to do for you but you. And so learn the difference. And then when you need help along the way, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. So I would say anybody that stick with us this long, man, thank you so much.
You got that right.
Right. I know it's long. It's long. You can all, but that's the thing. You can pause and come back to it. But but anybody who took the time to stay with us, man, we thank you. We appreciate you. This is a service of love. I don't get paid for this. Tyson don't get paid. That's why I call my sister Tyson, her last name. But no, man, we're here to help people and we just want to be a blessing. So I want to thank you for taking the time. Took me long enough to nab you down. Can't wait to see you over the holidays. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Love you, little brother.
All right. Love you too. Be well.
Peace.
Peace. All right, y'all. Keep it real.